Hello everyone, in today's video we will set up stamina. We will create a new stat and a new attribute from scratch and make sure our player can only run and jump if he has stamina left. I will be using my player UI for this one. If you don't have that, just make sure you have a HUD available. In order to create this, we will need Unity, Game Creator and the stats module. So let's dive in. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I will be reusing this scene. Now it doesn't really matter what scene you have as long as you have a player with a player UI, because we'll be adding our stat bar to that. Now if you've seen my player UI before, or you simply already have a mana or health bar, add it to your UI. That's all you really need. So let me duplicate this one, rename it. There we go. Now, in addition to stamina, I will also add hunger. I had a request for that. It's actually the easiest to set up once you know how this all works. So, going to add our stamina here. So let's start with the Game Creator stats. So Game Creator divides this in stats and attributes, and you have status effects as well. So if you go here, you have poison, for example. In attributes, you have the default health and mana, and stats, well, there's a lot more. Now, the way this works is health uses vitality, mana uses wisdom, and the nice thing here is you can see base value 30, base value 100, is you can actually change stats which will automatically change values for attributes. So really cool for an RPG setting, for example. Now I'm going to add one here, which is going to be endurance. We're going to use endurance for stamina. Maximum amount of stamina, really clear and simple here. There we go. Now the base value is going to be 100. I want it to be completely full once we start. Now we need a formula as well. So let's go over to the formulas. I'm simply going to create a new one here. There we go. Endurance. Now the default formulas, so the way they're set up by default, as you can see here, is all about max tier, threshold, etc. If you just create a new one, it will work the same as health, mana, all of that stuff. So I'm just going to keep it the same. Now going to add an attribute here, which will be stamina. Now the colors you assign here will basically assign the color of the bars. So that's quite important. So I just changed this to red for health, but you can change it to whatever color you want. We have mana is blue, and we're going to add a orangey, well, weird color, but that's stamina. I don't know why, but that's going to be stamina. There we go. And this uses endurance. So that's it. That's all set up. Now let's add our hunger here as well. Let's call this famine. I'm not really great with those names. There we go. Maximum amount of hunger sounds weird, but yeah, it's going to call it like that, whatever. Now hung could mean a lot of different things, but okay, fine. So by default it's 100 as well. We're going to subtract that slowly. Now let's add an attribute. Oh, let's make sure it actually has a formula. So create. Now hunger, thirst, those are survival things, so you don't have to use them. I'm just going to do it along simply because it's well, quite easy to set up, and someone asked about it. So let's add an attribute here called hunger. I don't know why. Actually, this should have been fam, not hung. There we go. And this uses famine. Not really sure I'm using the right naming here, but you know, you get the point. So I'm just going to, I don't know, keep it gray. Don't really care all that much. There we have it. So next up is going to be setting this up in the player UI. So let's go to, this is the player UI. I'm using the default one from my tutorial. There we go. Now, if you already have a health attribute, health bar, or a stamina bar, mana bar, doesn't really matter which one. All you need to do is simply just duplicate it, rename this stamina background. There we go. Let's rename this to stamina. And stamina. Reason I'm not creating it from scratch is, well, why would I? There's no reason. Just need to change literally one thing. Well, this is stamina. There we go. And that's it. Now it's functional. So yeah, not really a reason to use it from scratch. Create it from scratch. Now our stamina is going to be here. Slightly above it, I will add hunger. So let me duplicate that as well. And I know hunger could be in a different UI, but if you don't have one, I just want to show how it works. Hunger background, there we go. This is going to be above or below, actually. I don't know. There we go, hunger. Just need to make sure, I think it's this one. Yeah, uses hunger, there we go. Let's make this a bit smaller, actually. It doesn't need to be as big. So I think it's this one, yeah. Going to be half, and this one. Okay, well, apparently can't do it like that, can I? Going to keep things simple. Just going to do it like this for a moment. There we go. Perfect. Let's drag these back in. Going to rename these. So hunger delay and hunger bar. There we go. Now these by default will all be set up fine because we copied them over. Now the last thing we need to do is in the base canvas of your UI, you will need to add these attributes. So attribute UI and attribute UI. Now the reason the colors are by default assigned by the stat value is because we are dragging these in. So in color we have the hunger bar, and in value fill image we have the hunger bar as well. Stamina and stamina. There we go. Let's focus on our player here, and I will show you how this works. So right now they're not tied to anything, so their values won't change, but I just want to show that our bars are actually present. So there we have them, all nice and fancy, real cool. Pretty sure this is supposed to be orangey, actually. Let me double check that. player UI, so oh well, maybe we need to actually assign the attribute. That would help. There we go. So let's give that another go. And there we have it. So right now nothing happens, they're not depleting, but those are the default values. Now we're going to set up how they deplete and how they, well, refill as well. So I have this one, on game start. It has a bunch of triggers. So I use this for mana as well. I am simply going to reuse this one. It's no point to add a lot of new actions. If you don't have something similar, just add a trigger. And by default it will be on start anyway, and you add an action. Now I already have a on start trigger, so I'm going to reuse this one. Add attribute mana of player, and it adds mana by default and waits 1 second and restarts. So really simple, straightforward. Going to duplicate this for stamina. I want this to go slightly faster, and I'm going to duplicate this again for hunger, and this is going to be the opposite. So this is going to subtract 0.1, which is not a lot by default. Now you can play around with these values, see whatever works for you. That, just needs some testing really. So we're done with our user interface, that's all good. We have our onstat depleting. Now we need to add 2 triggers. There we go. So the first one will be on step, so once we walk, run, whatever you want to call it. And unfortunately, that's not how it will work for jumping. We need to make sure you can't jump by default, and the way this works is you need to make sure you're using the same button as you use for jumping. So by default, space is used for jumping, so on key down needs to be the space bar. If you have a different button for jumping, just make sure it's the exact same one. So we're going to add the 2 conditions here. So these depend on a stat value, so attribute value. So if a value is greater than, I'm going to do 5 here. You can change this value to whatever you want. I'm going to do it like this. You need at least 5 to be able to run and jump. That's simple. Well, to run, let's just say it like that. So to run, you need at least 5. So if we have at least 5 stamina, then we will allow our player to run. So let's change property here, and our player can run. If we don't have that, then he cannot run. Really simple. Now we need to subtract as well when we're running. So let's grab that stamina, subtract. We had 0.3 adding by default, so I'm going to actually subtract 1, which is a bit high, but that's fine if we're running. Now next up, so I'm going to copy this over, so I'm going to copy this one. Going to add it here in the clause. This is for jumping, so it needs at least 20 to jump. So we can copy over a couple of things here, it was just faster. There we go. So the reason it needs at least 20 is because I'm subtracting 20 when we jump. And for running, needs to be jumping, of course. Going to duplicate this one, and we cannot jump if we don't have at least 20. So that's the way this is set up. Really simple and straightforward. Now we set up hunger as well. How does hunger replenish? Well, that completely depends on your game systems. I'm not going to do that. I just showed you how hunger works. A stat similar to hunger, thirst, whatever. Now all you need to do is make sure you have somewhere that adds, well, hunger, so eating or consuming. If you have the inventory module, you can tie it to a potion, like this one for example. So this potion, it adds it, and well, you could do it the other way. Just, basically on consumption, it just adds. It's completely up to you. I'm not going to demonstrate how you would do that. That's something for a different video, but it's really simple. Just, once you consume something, so if you use the inventory system, you can see how that works. On consumption, you just add an action of attribute change, add 20, 50, whatever makes you happy. So there we have it. Now the hunger slowly depletes. Maybe it's a bit too fast even, because this would mean you'd have to eat a lot. But yeah, that's how it works. Now running, as you can see, depletes. So I'm running and it depletes, but you can run quite a bit. So maybe I should have depleted a bit more. Jumping takes up a lot more. It takes up 20. And now I can no longer jump because I no longer have 20. Same with running. I can no longer run because I'm depleted. Make sure you balance that. So as you can see right now, you have the odd time where I can, just for a bit, I can actually run. So make sure you find a good balance. But, it's stamina. It's not something that should slow, regenerate too slow. It's not some superpower that would make you OP. It's just simple running. So that's how it works. So yeah, really simple and straightforward once you know how to set up stats and attributes for yourself. So hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.